G'day, mate, and welcome to the Friday Facts with me, Jenny. This is Friday Facts number 371, Apple Silicon. And guess who I have with me? I have the wonderful Mojo. How you doing, Mojo?
Hello. I'm sleepy now because I just read the FFF.
No. Mojo. This is a
Yes.
critically important Friday Facts, okay? It gives us great insight into the expansion that we all want to have news on,
Oh
okay?
yes. Yes. This
Massive
is the
details
this is
right
the
at the end.
yeah. It's a long one. Like this goes through all of the expansion
No,
details that we
no,
want to know, and it's a very dense read.
that's pushing a bit too far. Okay, it's pushing a little bit too far. It doesn't have any of that. It does give us details about the expansion right at the end. Not a lot of details, but some
Yes, it
details.
does.
Yep. Okay. All right.
It does
So,
have details in there.
yep. This is Strange Pan, who's new at the office of Woo. Yes. He's here to share some exciting non-expansion news for our Mac players about an update that came out 3 weeks ago, right?
It's about 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's relevant and right up to date. So Factorio runs on Apple Silicon, it turns out. I know this because the update was posted, and many Mac users went, "I'll give that a shot." So yes, as of version 1.171, notice how the screenshots are for 7.2. Yep, Factorio mainly runs on Apple Silicon Macs. On these machines, the game should run faster and use less energy than previous versions. You can see which binary version you're running in the top left corner of the main menu, whether you're on the Mac 64 for Intel Macs or on the Mac ARM 64 for Apple Silicon Macs. Yes. It's been a long time coming, but we're never in a good position to implement these improvements until now. Now, Mojo, this is when we're going to get sidetracked already. Correct me, I believe it was prior to 1.0 that they lost their Mac developer.
Yeah. It was a long time ago, and there were had a hiring thing open for I can't remember how long, but it was a long time.
It was. They had they were looking for Mac dev for quite some time, and then they just gave up. Honestly, they gave
Yeah,
up.
it
They
just sort
couldn't
of
find one
disappeared.
because they just I think it was the push for 1.0. It's like we cannot bring somebody in this late in the game to try and optimize things for Macs. I remember there was some problem with some operating system for Mac that they couldn't get it to work for, and I think they finally fixed it all prior to 1.0, but very slimly. Like it was a little bit of a mess. And Mac users were left behind for quite some time where there weren't updates because they didn't work with some operating system Mac thing. I don't know, it's a Mac thing. But yes,
They're just a
but
little different.
yeah, just like the users. And I say that with the kindest heart as I grew up on a Mac. But let's leave that there. Motivation. In February, I traveled from the US to Woob's offices in Prague for the first time. Whilst waiting at the airport, I started to work on Factorio with my Intel MacBook Pro. Within 30 minutes, my laptop's battery had depleted more than half of its charge, and I had a 22-hour day ahead of me. Many more hours of travel planned this year, and a lot of work to do. I merely ordered an Apple Silicon MacBook from my seat in the airport. Obviously, he just got a new job working for Woob and can afford a Apple Silicon MacBook because Macs have come with Mac tax. Yes. Um When it arrived, I was instantly impressed with its battery life. I can now comfortably work on Factorio wherever I am. More importantly, the factory can grow wherever I am, but I was never satisfied. As a software engineer and a Factorio engineer, I had to ask myself, can I play Factorio even longer with native Apple Silicon support? And then it goes in the development, and there's a difference between ARM and X60, 86, 64 versions of Factorio and blah, 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 blah. And also, Twinson was developing the port for the Switch, which is technically on an ARM processor, isn't it?
That's also an ARM, yes. Quite
Yes.
an ancient ARM, mind you, but it is an ARM.
Yes. So they've done it on an ARM, an ancient ARM. So this theory, doing it on a more modern Mac one, shouldn't be that hard. You just got to account for the Mackiness. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, so the development of the Switch was super confidential. None of the community members who had access to Factorio source code were permitted to know, so avoid leaking the fact the port was being developed. I postponed working on the project until after the announcement. On October 19th, the time was right to start again. So this was from what? Feb through to
Yes.
October. Just did nothing about it, just left it because he had to wait for Twinson to do the announcement. Yep. So then they started working on it again. Yes. Next, we didn't update our Mac OS build process. The process had been reviewed for years, yes, and it contained a few time-consuming steps that were difficult to port for ARM architecture, and was using outdated compiler versions. With some trial and error, I rewrote and simplified Factorio's Mac build instructions and reduced the time to set up a clean Mac for Factorio development from a few hours to a few minutes, depending on the internet connection. With a more streamlined, standardized build process, instead of to work about updating our build rules to support ARM. This part was simple. They're already structured to support multiple architectures, so I simply added the ARM architecture alongside the 6486 architecture and fixed a few broken flags. So it seemed fairly easy, right?
Yeah, fairly straight. It
Yeah.
sounds like it's really just pulling it into line with the build process that was already there. Getting rid of the
Yeah.
legacy process.
Yeah, and then a few new build rules for generating a universal Mac OS binary, which was extremely easy. That sentence I was not expecting. We soon had a functioning version of Factorio that ran natively on both Apple Silicon and Intel Macs. Yes. Final change was deployment. A Mac OS Silver build uses an 86 processor. Let's just go 86 processor. So I needed to figure out how to compile both 86 and ARM versions of Factorio on a single 86 machine. Technical, blah, compilers linked, worked just fine. Obtaining the C libraries for ARM was surprisingly more difficult than it needed to be. After a lot of experimenting, I found the steps worked most consistently. Wrote a custom bash script. Mojo bash script. What's a bash script?
Bash is the Linux terminal, and the script is a way of automating commands in
Yeah.
said Linux terminal.
Yeah. Okay. So it just whacks in a bunch of commands one after another and just runs them 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like clicking next when installing something. Then all that text comes up on the screen that says finished, right? It's all
More or
that
less.
text. Yep.
I do the same thing, but Python.
Let's not move into another language just yet. Okay. The
And
bash
cron
script.
tab.
Oh god, Mojo. Okay, the bash script downloads and manually installs the ARM64 C libraries from Homebrew, as making it the most hacky part of the whole process, but most developers never need to do this. In total, it took about 4 weeks to investigate, develop, test, finalize, and deploy the new Mac OS build process. Performance improvements. We used this particular map. There is a link there which, from memory, goes to the UPS website, right? Yes, so you can look at this particular map and you can run it in any computer and you can test your UPS versus others on the Factorio Box website. Very, very helpful, actually. There is, what's the name of the couple of Aussies that do CPU reviews? Hardware Unboxed.
Hardware Unboxed.
Yeah, they've started using Factorio maps to test one CPU versus another. It's worth investigating if you're upgrading your PC. Yeah.
I think a few people have done that. YouTubers have done that now. I think even Linus Tech Tips has even got in on it.
I think they did for the last Intel launch. Maybe that's the only one I can think of. Whereas Hardware Unboxed has been doing this for quite some time. A number of generations now. So you can compare one stat to another if you're buying brand new, sure, but having several generations means you look at an old CPU if you're doing an upgrade and blah 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 blah. But yes, we do notice it's about 25% faster using the native Mac Silicon. Yes, compared to using ARM rather than the x86.
Using the native instead of the whatever their compatibility layer is.
It's being emulated. Yeah, that's the words I'm looking for.
Emulated.
Yes, and also use less power. So more UPS, less power. Great. That sounds like a great bonus, especially if you're on a laptop, or anything that's running on battery most of the time. And they're using a MacBook Pro 14-inch 2021 version, Apple One
Which is a
M1 Max.
Standard M1.
I have no idea. Are we up to M2 or
They're
something now, or 3?
Yeah, we're up to M2. Well, we've gone from the M1 to the M1 Max to the M2.
Okay.
Oh yeah, as you say, he's got the M1 Max. Yeah.
Okay. So an M1 versus an M1 Max, they kind of just go like version 1, version 2, version 3, like everybody else.
No, you got to make it complicated and say M1, M1 Max, then M2, and then who knows what the next M2 will be.
But if they went through it fast, they catch up with the iPhone, because they're up to iPhone whatever now, 13, 14,
15, 16. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. They can just catch up to the iPhone.
They could synchronize with the iPad
Oh no 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 no!
Because
Hang on
the
hang on.
iPad, the
I
Air, and the MacBook are all the same thing,
no no
basically.
no. I own an iPad. I have a. There was an iPad 1 and then an iPad 2 and then a new iPad which was colloquially called the iPad 3. Then there was an iPad 3 for memory. Then there was a new iPad 3, and then there was an iPad mini, and then I recently went buying an iPad for one of the kids last year. It was a nightmare because rather being an iPad, 2010 versus a 2011 or whatever it happened to be, or a iPad 13 versus a 14, which is nice and simple. They're completely different numbers, completely different versions, completely different words, and you're meant to understand what word means what version. Nightmare, nightmare, absolute nightmare.
I'm glad that I've never looked at iPads since iPad 2.
Yep, yeah, it was great. Yep, super great. Anyway, back to the Friday facts. Um, So it's roughly about 25%. They can't get precise numbers because you can't get exact details on battery usage and well, UPS you can, but battery usage you can't really. And the only one to really do a one-for-one test is probably fully charge it, start up the map, then unplug it, and literally count the minutes with it just running the test over and over until it just runs flat and dies. That's really the only way to get a one-for-one test. So then you go, yeah, this one lasts 13% longer because it was running with a more optimized version. But yes. The results are exciting, definitely better than what I'd hoped for. Individual experiences may differ, but so far players reported an overall improvement in performance. Of course they have. Good shout out to Thennernas, community manager. Oh my god,
Theranos,
Exormathan.
community member,
There you go.
Zormath.
Yeah, and others who had source experts, testing new builds. SansiQ, which we haven't heard from for a long time.
Oh,
Helping
yeah.
patients updating our deployment machines, of course. Twinson for his excellent support on ARMS, excellent work on ARM support. Now the question is, we now have Factorio running on a Switch. Also,
Yes.
it can run on native ARM, right? On a
Or
Mac.
M1.
Close. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. So the question I have for you, Mojo, is now it can run on M1. Does that mean we can have Factorio on an iPad?
Well, the latest one has an M1 as well, so conceivably, as long as it's in the, because this is actually a thought that came to my mind. How do you get Apple binaries onto MacBooks? Like, can you still load them outside the Apple Store?
I have no idea. That requires me to own a Mac and delve into that architecture. Um,
Because
there's probably somebody
yeah,
in the comments that can answer this properly for us. And I'm willing to bet that if you're in some sort of development mode, same as your mobile phone, like I've got a Samsung, but Apple's the same. You could turn on a development mode and then you can load any binary you want onto your phone through however you want and install it and run it. But it only works sometimes with some limitations in development mode, and you need to press a lot of buttons to get to development mode. And I actually had to look up mine, and I have to press have to go into the About Phone page and then press the About Phone 5 times within 3 seconds or something to then get a prompt to get to development mode. There's no on-off button anymore. It's thoroughly hidden. Yeah.
they really don't want you touching it.
No, they don't. They don't. But does that mean because in theory, okay, if we have a non-keyboard mouse interface for the Switch, then therefore if we can run on an M1 microprocessor that is also on an iPad, in theory you could take the interface or a similar interface from the Switch and shove it into the M1 iPad version, and then it already is running on that
And,
architecture. So
and
then
now
we
and
could.
now you have this wonderful Frankenstein of a combination of Switch and Mac.
Well, it's just the control interface from the Switch version.
Yeah, it's just the controls. It's nothing dramatic.
But then that brings you to the next question of does that mean that there's a possibility if it's going to be on an iPad that it could then be possibly on an iPhone? Are we actually going to see the Factorio? What was it? The April Fool's joke from all those years
Oh,
ago with
yes.
Factorio running on an iPhone. Are we actually going to see it? Is
I
it going
kind
to
of want to see
become
it happen.
reality?
If the M1 ever finds its way into the iPhone, it might.
Look, they're converting everything across. They've already got their laptops are running M1. The iPads are running M1. I could see the phones going to M1 sooner or later.
I suppose they are already anyway, so it's not. It's the graphics really that's the hard part.
Meh.
in my mind.
Eh.
Yeah.
It's possible, right? Can we agree it's possible?
It's not impossible.
Okay.
It is possible for life to imitate art.
Okay. So we could eventually see Factorio on an iPhone, which means every Android user out there might consider dropping their Android phone to get an iPhone just so they can play Factorio. But an iPad is much higher possibility because that at least has a decent sized screen. Because I could not imagine playing Factorio on a 5-inch screen, no matter what.
It would suck.
No matter what. That sounds horrible. That sounds really, really horrible. Yep. Okay. So conclusion. Last week I charged my MacBook for full and opened the Megabase our team built during our most recent expansion playthrough. And I set to work fixing manufacturing problems and troubleshooting logistical issues, expanding the factory and building defenses. I got lost in the glorious mess we built for 3.5 hours before needing to recharge. My game ran at a comfortable 60 FPS the entire time. So, what have we
Good
learnt
sign.
in this Friday Facts, Mojo?
We have learned in conclusion,
Mm-hmm.
there's a version for native M1 Max now,
Mm-hmm.
a Factorio. It runs at 60 FPS on battery on an unspecified size of factory base.
No. It's specified. It's Megabase.
Well, they say it's just the expansion test run.
No. Open the Megabase our team built during the recent expansion playthrough.
Yeah.
So it's Megabase.
It depends on their definition of megabase, though. It could
No.
just
We
be a base
haven't
that's
got
very
into
big.
try to define a Megabase. That's an entirely different subject. But
I mean, it could be a massive base that doesn't do anything.
Yeah. This is entirely true. Yep. But yep. We've got native Mac. It runs at 60 FPS on the unseen, unspecified, unreleased any details for apart from the weird alien thing we saw. I don't know 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah.
Yep. And it runs at 60 FPS. Yep. That's FPS, not UPS. That's a very big clarification that Mojo missed.
Yeah, I sort of glossed over it, but if the UPS does go down, the FPS would go down with it.
Yeah. It depends on what's reporting the FPS, because technically I've had a situation where Steam is reporting that Factorio is running at 60 FPS. Well, Steam is reporting the game I'm playing is running at 60 FPS, and Factorio is like, no, we're running at 45 UPS and 45 FPS, and Steam's just entirely wrong. But yeah, technically, it does drop.
Technically, they're both right for probably for reasons that I don't really want to get into.
Yeah. That's a whole separate Friday Facts. That's Friday Facts 371.5. Yep.
That's the extended live stream rambly version.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Links to live streams are down in the description. Go check us both out. Yep. Anything else we've learnt during this Friday Facts?
We also learned, although we kind of knew this already, that the last generations of Intel MacBooks sucked for both battery life and efficiency.
Yeah, outright.
They're terrible.
It was really,
so
really
it's actually
bad.
also amazing that he wasn't able to fry an egg on it.
Entirely yes. I don't have an answer for that one.
Because the last Intel MacBook that came out was
super hot.
Yeah, it was like 100 degrees or something.
Thermal throttled every time. I remember now.
The i9 just couldn't do anything.
Yes, I remember now. Okay. Yes. Mojo is correct. We've learned all those things. The real thing I took away is it says a megabase. Now, general community rules are a megabase can launch 1 rocket per minute or 1,000 science per minute, right?
Yes, that's the consensus.
Yep. So in theory, the Woob team built a base that could do 1,000 science per minute of the expansion. So we have learnt that either rockets per minute or science per minute is still a quantifying factor in Factorio DLC expansion land.
You heard it here first.
That's the only thing I can take away from this whole Friday Facts.
Yep.
That was the only details we got
still
about
have
the expansion.
Rockets. Yes.
We still have rockets, or we have science, or we have something that fits in place for a rocket that can substitute for a rocket that equals science per minute, or some sort of science per minute, or biters killed per minute to equal purple things that you need to pick up to get science per minute, which has to be in an automated way, because God, when you had to do it manually, it was horrible.
And then you get people who add mods which re-add it
Bring it back. Yeah,
because they're like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those who played on 14 and 15 know exactly what we're talking about. Everybody else, go look at a very old YouTube series. That's the only suggestion I have, because Purple Science was a nightmare.
Especially when someone decides to multiply it by 4 and then
And
not realize that that they're multiplying the intermediates by 4 as well. So it's actually multiplying by like 16 or
oh
15,
yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah.
it was. It was a lot.
It was bad. It was very bad. And we had red, green, military, and purple. There wasn't blue, was there? Or was
Yeah,
there
that was
blue?
blue. Blue goes back to the original
Hang on,
science
there was no
packs.
military.
No, there was no military. That was
Military.
15. It was just
Yep,
red, green, blue, and purple. Purple being the alien science.
yep. Alien science. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And filter inserters went into blue science.
Hey, prior to that, we had smart inserters, which were before filter inserters, but that's a whole different topic for another
Oh
Friday
yeah.
Facts at another time. Yes, we've learnt exactly nothing. Nothing important or relevant about the DLC expansion. But the good news to all Mac users, in case you haven't realized that your Factorio updated, you got an extra 25% UPS if you're happy running on an M1 Mac. If you're still on an Intel Mac, maybe it's time to upgrade. That's the only piece of advice I have.
I'm sorry. You bought one.
Yeah, we're both sorry. We're both sorry you bought one, and there is a possibility we might have Factorio on an iPad in the future. Because in theory, it's take a bit of code from here and a bit of code from here and slap them together, and voila, iPad version. I don't know how well that would sell.
Oh, actually, I should preface that by saying, unless you have a 2012, 2013, 2014, or I think 2015 MacBook Pro, those were actually really nice laptops.
They were the prior to the Intel i9s, weren't they?
Yeah. And they were
Yeah,
actually like legitimately really good.
yeah,
It
that
was
they were good.
2017 onwards when it started going downhill.
Yeah, Intel and Mac didn't work well together. But yeah,
Yeah.
and then they separated, and I'm pretty sure that one of them had put the writing on the wall for the other one, and hence, all support went out the window, and those who bought Apple Macs at that stage just got shafted. All right, with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been fun. We'll be back with the next Friday Facts whenever it is. Hopefully, with some information about the actual expansion, or maybe, as predicted, you heard it here first, there will be Factorio on an iPad, following shortly thereafter with Factorio on an iPhone. Yep.
Or
Yep.
maybe something completely left field, Factorio on the ARM Surface, or even a Raspberry Pi.
That was the other thing. Yes, it's quite possible that we could see Factorio on any ARM processor now,
Yes.
which could be interesting. And in theory, actually, I'm willing to bet somebody's probably working on that in their basement right now. They're not necessarily a Woob employee, but just somebody who's curious. Can I get Factorio to run on my Raspberry Pi? It's like Doom. Can you get Doom to run on your fridge? Well, the new standard would be, can I get Factorio to run on it? Factorio on an
Sure as
Apple
possible.
Watch when? All right, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching.
Okay.
Hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the very next video. All right, bye.
See ya.